actually tying into that, the new distribution models, whether it's web-based, Steam, or something other than another disk to lose, how much does that impact what you guys are trying to do as far as releases of new games or content updates to existing titles?
That's a really easy one for me. We've got so many titles and so many expansions going out every year. We will do retail for the larger titles because retail is, oh God, I hope anybody here from GameStop? I hope not. Retail is a pain in the ass. I mean, it's really hard because you have to get all of your assets made months and months and months before your game is final or before your expansion is final. And you have to arrange for the printing of retail boxes and the distribution, and the profit margin's much smaller. It's really, really tough. We recognize that retail is a great place to be, and it's a fantastic place to get new eyes on your product. So retail is always going to be really, really important. But we also do digital distribution directly, also through Steam, through almost anybody who will work with us really, direct to drive as well. And also we found that digital distribution has solved our problems for distributing product overseas. Because when you're dealing with overseas players, you've got a whole other ball of wax in terms of legal issues and that sort of thing. So we contract with distributors who will do it digitally over there too. It's, so I think it's important, just like with making games themselves, to diversify as much as possible. But, oh, we love digital. The good thing about digital is you can be patching the night before and you still send out the whole darn thing the next morning as soon as it releases.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, especially for the kind of the mid and small scale games like I've worked a lot with, I think, you know, digital distribution is definitely the future. I mean, you know, like Linda said, there's so much overhead. Even when we just, when I worked at 3DO, we would just mail out CDs to people. We didn't even have to get them in the store, and that was still a huge, you know, production because, like she said, you know, we had to get the whole client on the CD, and then then if we had to, you know, this is Meridian 59 used to work on 56K modems for all you old people out there. You know, we had to be very careful about what we patched. So, you know, it was such a pain in the ass. Again, going back to Farmville, you know, being able to display on a web page is a huge boon for you. You know, web-based games. You know, one of the projects I'm working on right now is to make a Flash-based client for MMO. You know, it's going to be simple in 2D. It's not going to be, you know, 3D flashy graphics. But again, going back to the previous, you know, thing about lowering costs, that's going to be great. I don't have to put a disc in the store. You don't even have to barely download anything besides kind of the initial assets that the Flash client needs to display. You know, that's going to really drive down costs and really allow us to do some, you know, things. The big problem, like I said before, is, you know, you need to kind of, if a game like that interests you, jump in both feet, because, you know, it may not stay 2D forever if there's enough support.
Yeah, an MMO is really a service, not a product, at least the way we think about it. So the whole fact that you go to a store and you buy it in a box is just kind of a legacy of technology, I guess. It doesn't let you be as responsive as you want to be as basically a provider of entertainment services, which is what MMO companies are trying to do. So we definitely embraced digital very strongly. You know, all the trends are towards that, although retail is still viable, still a very meaningful number of sales, but digital, you know, continues to be the trend. And again, anything you can do to reduce friction, back to the Farmville or Facebook, I think. I was seeing something from Richard Garriott, who was kind of talking about the 3 phases of MMOs, or of games actually, which I agree with, which was phase 1, you go to a store, you buy a single player game, and you pay $50 for it and you play it. Phase 2, you go to a store, you buy a game, and you play multiplayer online, whether it's an MMO or an online shooter, but it's all about meeting people online, developing a relationship, and then playing with them. You didn't necessarily know them ahead of time, though. And phase 3 is all about you're actually, you know, just sending the link to your real-world friends, or your online friends, and you're spreading that way. And so anything that reduces the friction when you like a game and you tell people, and you can do more of that online in addition to a conference, that's where the industry seems to be going. So.
Yeah, for us, midway through our production, I'd say midway, we went straight for web-based. And part of it was because, again, our audience in particular, we knew we had a problem. Even with a downloadable client, kids were going to have trouble installing and everything else. So it just became a point of access that was just like, no, let's get it as easy as possible so that we can get them in playing it, and Unity just came along and it was just perfect for us. So web was really our main and only point of distribution for our audience.
Hi, this is more a question directed towards Linda, but I'd like to get everybody else's thoughts on it
Yes,
as
I'd be
well.
happy to go for a beer after this.
There are a lot of games put out by the major game distributors. One that really comes to mind is MXO, that had very, very passionate fan bases. And they didn't have a lot of players, but the players that did play were very, very passionate about the game. And they cared a lot about the game, and they wanted to see the game grow. But I guess there wasn't enough revenue to induce the producers to keep adding content to the game. Is there any value, given that the industry's moving towards this free-to-play model, is there any traction or any value in maybe reevaluating some of these games with really passionate fan bases and bringing them back as free-to-play or ad-supported games?
Okay, now this is an interesting one. We've got two games that have had this problem. They're both games that SOE acquired after the fact. SOE did not develop the Matrix. Now, one of the things we're dealing with is it's a very high-priced IP owned by Warner Brothers, and they kept full control of it. So as soon as you bring a third party who owns an IP into the mix, it makes it really, really tough because they expect to see significant revenue figures. There's also the fact that the actual architecture, I hope I'm not going to get fired for saying this, the actual architecture and structure of the game, the programming itself, the code, was not so good. It wasn't something that could be salvaged without completely rewriting the entire game from scratch. And that is really the reason why it lost so many subscribers. There is very little that our developers could do with that. On the other hand, so what I'm saying is it's not going to come back because Warner Brothers would have to be involved, and you'd have to go through the whole process from scratch again. So will it come back 10 years from now? Who knows? I mean, we cannot predict what the SMED is going to do. So he might decide next summer that, you know what, the Matrix was actually a pretty good idea and we should do that again. But at this time, I don't see that happening just because of the huge cost volume involved, and also we have a pretty good idea for how many people were interested in it when it launched, before people realized what the problems were with the game. So again, you're looking at knowing how much revenue you can potentially generate. I think I agree it would be an ideal product for a free-to-play model, but let's look at the other game that we bought, Vanguard. That was purchased by Sigil, but there were, interestingly enough, a lot of ex-SOE people worked on that game, and therefore the code was, we could work with the code. And a tremendous number of improvements were made to that game. Actually, if you wanted to jump in and try it now, you could. And would that game be a good model for a free-to-play? I think it's in a pretty good position to give that a try, but that's something that has to be discussed internally, and I'd keep your eye on that if I were you. Free-to-play, as others have mentioned, is really good for the smaller subscriber-based games, the ones where you're not going to have a gazillion people playing. And it would also afford a game like Vanguard the chance to bring back people who hadn't played it for, several years because they don't know what's changed with the game and how much better it is now. So free-to-play gives them, it's a no-brainer. It costs you nothing except for the time to download. So yeah, I think that would be ideal, but I can't speak for the company.
Just to kind of give a third-party point of view here, though, Sony Online has actually done a really good job with maintaining games. They've been one of the major studios, besides Matrix Online. That was the first game they shut down. And they've done a really good job with maintaining it. Consider how old EverQuest is right now. I ran a game that was as old as EverQuest was a couple of years ago. I know that you have that small dedicated fan base, and
EverQuest not so small. I have to tell you, it's amazing to me how many people play that.
On a relative scale for Sony's accounting, I'd love to have that many players, but anyway, but when you have a game that has a lot of dedicated fans, the main thing you got to keep in mind though is still a business. You still have to worry about balance sheet, you still have to worry about income, and as much as people are passionate about it, if you've got expenses, like Linda said, if you've got a third party holding the IP saying, hey, where's our cream every month, then you've really got it's a lot harder to kind of keep it open. And as much as you hate to kind of cut the fans off at the knees, sometimes you just got to make a business decision.
Yeah, if the fan base is really passionate, the question would be, are they passionate enough to subscribe? Because I actually would say the opposite, which is if there was a game that really had a very passionate fan base that you weren't trying to grow and do a major investment in, but keep alive, keep maintained, and do incremental content updates to it, the question is the fan base really enough so that they're going to spend a lot of hours in the game and they're going to subscribe? And I'd say more the subscription model could work for that. And there's some games that are doing that aren't making headlines, but they've got revenue coming in that keeps a team that's really passionate about the game and works closely with the community and keeps it around that way. So.
Probably our most passionate community is going to have to be the Star Wars Galaxies community. And it's not huge, but it's very steady. I can't release subscription figures, but they have remained the same or actually slightly trending up this year, which is weird to me for a game that's that old. Those people are not budging, and they are incredibly passionate, as anyone who has ever had to moderate the Star Wars Galaxies forums will know. But, yeah.